How did you deal with loss?
Faith. You know, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic. The church has been a big part of my life.
Now, does everybody there look like you, or are there just a lot of Pierce Brosnans walking around, you know?
No.
Digging ditches and stuff?
No.
You know Pierce Brosnan as James Bond, the man who always won, who always survived. But what you're about to hear is the story of a man who has faced battles that even 007 couldn't fight his way out of. At 71 years old, Pierce is preparing for something heartbreaking. His first wife passed away from ovarian cancer when she was just 43. Then his daughter died from the exact same disease at 41. And now, something has happened that's forcing him to confront his deepest nightmare all over again. What he's planning to do next has everyone worried, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why his story is one of the most heartbreaking in Hollywood. Pierce Brosnan came into this world on May 16, 1953, in a small town in Ireland called Drogheda. He wasn't born into wealth or privilege. In fact, he was born into absence. His father, Thomas, was a carpenter who disappeared from Pierce's life so early that Pierce couldn't remember what he looked like. He couldn't remember his voice or even a single moment with him. It was like his dad had simply vanished into thin air, leaving nothing behind but questions. His mother, May, was left to pick up the pieces. She worked as a nurse, trying desperately to hold everything together. But in 1957, when Pierce was just 4 years old, she made an impossible decision. She left for London to find work, leaving her little boy behind in Ireland. She didn't want to do it, but she had no choice. That separation was supposed to be temporary, maybe a few months. Instead, it turned into 7 long years. During those 7 years, Pierce was passed around like a package between relatives. First, he stayed with his grandparents in Navan. Then he moved to live with an uncle and aunt in Trim. Each new house meant new rules, new schools, and new faces that didn't feel like home. Pierce never stayed anywhere long enough to feel like he belonged. He learned to stay quiet, to watch people instead of trusting them, to survive in a world where nothing felt permanent. He was always the new kid, always on the outside looking in. Teachers noticed something about him. He was smart, but he seemed far away. He'd stare out the window during class, lost in his own thoughts, never quite present in the moment. Then in 1964, everything shifted. At age 11, Pierce moved to Greenock, Scotland. His mother had remarried a man named William Carmichael, who worked in a factory. William was kind and patient, but for a boy who had grown up without any consistency, this new home brought complicated feelings. Pierce was happy to finally see his mother again after all those years, but he was also angry. She had someone else now, a new man in her life, and that man wasn't his father. Still, William tried his best. He taught Pierce small but important things like how to fish, how to fix things around the house, and most importantly, how to trust again. He never pushed too hard or tried to replace the father Pierce had lost. One day, William took Pierce to see a movie. It was 1964, and the film was called Goldfinger. Sean Connery played James Bond, and when that character appeared on screen, something clicked inside Pierce. Bond wasn't just a character to him. Bond was everything Pierce wasn't, but desperately wanted to be. Bond was strong, confident, always in control. That night at the cinema planted a seed in Pierce's mind that would grow for decades. By age 16, Pierce made a bold decision. He dropped out of regular school in London and enrolled in an art school called St. Martin's. He didn't have money or connections, just a deep passion for painting. He loved the work of famous artists like Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. Back then, acting wasn't even on his radar. He focused on illustration and design, surviving on nothing but toast and tea, while his classmates came from much wealthier families. He was determined to prove he deserved to be there. But fate had different plans. In 1971, while still studying art, Pierce wandered into a theater workshop in South London. He saw someone practicing fire eating, of all things. Instead of just watching and walking away, Pierce asked if he could try it. That one spontaneous, fearless moment completely rewrote his future. The theater group noticed something special in him, a mix of natural bravery and presence that you can't teach. They invited him to join them, and even though he had never acted before, everything suddenly started making sense. Pierce joined the Drama Centre London for 3 years, from 1973 to 1976. The training was brutal. More than 60% of students dropped out because they couldn't handle it. The teachers were incredibly tough, breaking students down mentally and emotionally before trying to rebuild them into actors. Some students quit. Others had complete breakdowns. But Pierce pushed through every challenge. He worked multiple side jobs to pay the £1,200 per year tuition, which was a fortune back then. He studied Shakespeare, trained in mime, and even learned circus acts. He never gave up. His first real breakthrough came in 1976 with a stage play called Wait Until Dark. It was a thriller, and Pierce played a character that made audiences genuinely uncomfortable. The director saw something cold and unsettling in him, and that edge worked perfectly. A year later, he took on a challenging Tennessee Williams play that had already flopped in America, but Pierce brought it to life in London. Critics praised his performance, and suddenly people in the industry were starting to notice his name. He moved into film next. In 1980, he had a tiny role alongside Elizabeth Taylor. He was on screen for less than 30 seconds and earned just £50, but it was a start. That same year, he appeared in a movie called The Long Good Friday with Helen Mirren. He played a small character, and the movie wasn't an immediate hit, but over time it became a cult classic. Pierce was quietly and steadily building his path toward stardom. Then came 1982, the year that changed everything. Pierce auditioned for a new television show called Remington Steele, originally just for a tiny role as a murder victim. But the casting director saw something magnetic in him and called him back to audition for the lead role instead. The original plan was to cast a seasoned American actor in his 50s, but they gave the role to 29-year-old Pierce, who was Irish and completely unknown in the United States. His accent almost cost him the part because executives worried American audiences wouldn't accept a foreign lead. But once he stepped into the role, he became Remington Steele, and audiences absolutely loved him. The show premiered on October 1st, 1982, and immediately became a massive hit. Over 15 million people tuned in each week during the first year. But here's where things get complicated. Only 2 months after the show started airing, critics were already saying, Pierce should be the next James Bond. By January 1983, entertainment magazines were calling him the most Bond-like actor since Sean Connery. Even Ian Fleming's widow publicly said that Pierce looked and acted exactly like what her husband had envisioned for the character. The Bond speculation exploded, and by 1986, it seemed like Pierce's dream was finally coming true. Remington Steele had been cancelled, which meant he was free to take the Bond role. But then disaster struck. When word got out that Pierce might become the next Bond, the show's ratings suddenly surged. The network saw an opportunity and reversed the cancellation, ordering one more short season. Pierce was still under contract, which meant he legally couldn't film Bond. It was absolutely brutal. The attention he received from being linked to Bond was used against him to trap him in his TV contract. While he finished that final season, the Bond producers couldn't wait any longer. They moved on and gave the role to Timothy Dalton instead. But here's what most people don't know about Pierce's personal life during those years. In the late 1970s, he met an actress named Cassandra Harris. She was beautiful and had 2 children from a previous marriage, Charlotte and Christopher. When Pierce met Cassandra, the connection was instant and powerful. They got married on December 27, 1980. When Cassandra's ex-husband died suddenly in 1986, Pierce didn't hesitate. He legally adopted Charlotte and Christopher, giving them his last name. But it was more than just paperwork to him. Pierce hadn't grown up with a father, so he poured everything he had into being the dad he never had himself. In 1983, Pierce and Cassandra had a son together named Sean. Their family felt complete and full of love. Pierce made sure those kids felt safe and seen in a way he never experienced growing up. But then in 1987, while Pierce was filming a movie in India, Cassandra started feeling really sick. They rushed back to London and the diagnosis was devastating. Ovarian cancer, and it had already spread throughout her body. What followed were 4 brutal years of fighting. Cassandra went through 8 different surgeries and a year and a half of chemotherapy. Her hair fell out, her body weakened, but she stayed incredibly strong through it all. Pierce stood by her side constantly, but he often felt helpless watching the woman he loved suffer. Their young son Sean, just a little boy at the time, would sometimes pretend to be the doctor, which was both sweet and absolutely heartbreaking. The worst part was that Cassandra's mother had also died from ovarian cancer. It wasn't just terrible luck. It was genetic, which meant Charlotte was at risk too. In December 1991, Cassandra's time ran out. One night as they lay together, she whispered to Pierce, "Please, darling, don't worry. It's just a life winding down." She was still trying to comfort him even at the very end. She didn't want machines or hospitals. She wanted dignity and to face death on her own terms. She passed away on December 28, 1991. She was only 43 years old. Pierce and her son Christopher were with her, while Charlotte was on the phone from London, where she was studying acting. Christmas had just passed, and while everyone else was celebrating, Pierce was planning a funeral. Then came the hardest moment of all, telling 8-year-old Sean that his mother was gone forever. Pierce suddenly had to raise 3 kids completely alone. He said it was the first time he had truly felt grief, and it absolutely overwhelmed him. But Cassandra had done something before she died that shows how much she believed in him. Back in 1981, she had been cast in a Bond film called For Your Eyes Only. While she was filming, Pierce met the Bond producer Albert Broccoli. Cassandra pushed Pierce to go for the role and told Broccoli he should consider him. Even when she got sick and her time was running out, she wanted to see him become James Bond before she passed away. She never got to see it happen, but she never stopped believing in him. Finally, in 1994, 3 years after Cassandra's death, Pierce was officially cast as James Bond. His debut film, GoldenEye, was released in 1995, and it was a massive success. The movie made $353 million worldwide and literally saved the entire Bond franchise from dying. Pierce did 90% of his own stunts, including a terrifying bungee jump off a 220-meter dam in Switzerland. It was so dangerous that insurance companies refused to cover it. Pierce went on to make 3 more Bond films, and together they made over $1 billion. But that success came with personal pain. He was still grieving Cassandra, and he poured that grief into his performance. He became one of the most beloved actors to ever play James Bond. Then, in 2004, everything came crashing down. Pierce was in the Bahamas when his phone rang. The Bond producers were on the line, and they cut him loose in a 47-second phone call. No warning, no explanation, just, "Thank you very much. Goodbye." It was cold and heartless, especially since his last Bond film had made more money than any previous Bond movie. Within 3 days, multiple movie deals disappeared, and his career seemed to be over. But something beautiful had happened 10 years earlier. In April 1994, just months before he became Bond, Pierce met a journalist named Keely Shea Smith at a beach party in Mexico. They talked until 2 in the morning, and she wasn't impressed by his fame. She liked who he was as a person. Within 3 weeks, he flew her to meet his kids. 6 months later, she moved in. Their connection was genuine and deep. In 2001, they got married in Ireland in a ceremony that cost over $2 million. Pierce cried when he saw Keely walking down the aisle. They had 2 sons together, Dylan and Paris, and Keely became the rock that held Pierce together through everything that came next. Because in 2013, the nightmare repeated itself. Charlotte, Pierce's adopted daughter, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at age 38. For 3 years, she fought the same disease that had killed her grandmother and her mother. Pierce watched helplessly as history repeated itself in the cruelest way possible. Charlotte got married on June 14, 2013, to her longtime partner Alex Smith. 2 weeks later, on June 28th, she passed away. She was only 41 years old, even younger than her mother had been. She was surrounded by her husband, her 2 children Isabella and Lucas, and her brothers. At a cancer fundraiser in 2014, Pierce stood on stage and said, "I held the hand of my first wife Cassie as cancer took her life. And just last year, I held the hand of my wonderful daughter Charlotte, before she too died from this inherited disease." The echoes were haunting. Charlotte's daughter Isabella was 15 when she lost her mother, the same age Charlotte had been when Cassandra was diagnosed. Lucas was 8, the same age Sean had been when his mother died. Even in her final weeks, Charlotte arranged her wedding because she wanted her children to see that love still mattered, even in the darkest moments. Not everyone in the family coped well. Christopher, Pierce's adopted son, fell into a dark spiral after Cassandra's death. He struggled with alcohol and drugs for years, going in and out of jail. In June 2024, he was spotted in public for the first time in 20 years, looking gaunt and alone at 51 years old. Meanwhile, Keely faced her own battle. For years, tabloids mocked her weight gain, showing cruel before and after photos. Internet trolls attacked her constantly, but Pierce defended her fiercely, saying, "I love every curve of her body. She is the most beautiful woman in my eyes." In 2024, Keely lost 100 pounds through walking, swimming, and eating whole foods. She did it for herself, with patience and self-respect. In August 2024, Pierce and Keely celebrated 23 years of marriage and 31 years since they first met. Through tragedy, grief, and unimaginable loss, they stayed strong together. Pierce called her his north, south, east, and west. Keely replied that he was the finest, loveliest, tenderest person she had ever known. Today, at 71, Pierce is still working. He was cast in Black Adam in 2022 and continues to take roles. But more importantly, he's turned his pain into purpose. He's been a UNICEF ambassador since 2001. He's marched with Greenpeace, spoken out against nuclear weapons, and raised millions for cancer awareness. When Charlotte was sick, he said he would do anything, call anyone, go anywhere, or beg, if it meant she could live. He couldn't save her, but he's still trying to save others. Pierce Brosnan's story isn't just about being James Bond. It's about being a man who has faced unimaginable loss and still chooses to stand up every single day. He lost his wife at 43 to ovarian cancer. He lost his daughter at 41 to the same disease. He's watched the people he loved most suffer, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. But through it all, he's never given up. He's loved deeply, grieved openly, and used his platform to make a difference. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories about the real lives behind Hollywood's biggest stars. And leave a comment below telling us what Pierce Brosnan means to you. Thank you for watching. And remember, even the strongest people face battles we never see.